Hello fellow travellers, thanks for stopping by. Today I want to take the time to discuss a game that has had quite a bit of controversy about it fairly recently. FNAF Sister Location. A game that, as you may have known, was covered by fairly new FNAF YouTubers Arya and Pastra, both of them having mostly negative things to say about the game. Before I begin my analysis, I'm going to say please do not send anyone or anything in this video hate. Right, let's begin. Now it's obvious Sister Location isn't anything like the other FNAF games in this franchise. There's the first positive aspect of the game. Scott didn't repeat the same thing and tried something different. Whether he was successful or not is yet to be decided in this video. There's not much to talk about with Night 1. Just like FNAF 3, there is no actual threat on Night 1. FNAF 3 lets you get comfortable with the new attraction, Bone Dude giving you some basics on how to survive, whereas Sister Location lets you see the models of Ballora and Funtime Foxy performing on stage, as well as a small snippet of Baby talking to you, then a bit of a jump scare in the end. This night feels like the first incident out of a paranormal horror movie, and you might be thinking, Darius Devil, what a weird connection to make. And to that I say, yes, but actually no. What I'm trying to say is there's just a hint of horror in this night. Its goal is to garner your interest and lure you further into the game. Even though I praise FNAF 3 so much, its first night does not achieve this aspect, whereas Sister Location does. For the whole Biddy Bamp not jump scaring you complaint, I mean, sure, but the loud banging noise was supposed to be the jump scare. But yeah, sure, I guess that's weird. Don't see why that would bother someone, because that contradicts the big complaint regarding Night 5. Night 2 switches up the scene, being quite possibly the longest night in the game, maybe besides the fake ending route, with the first gameplay section being Baby giving us her second monologue, and also her first attempt at manipulating us. Then the Biddy Babs arrive. Whilst the first section of Night 2 is easy, the utilization of voice acting in this game is top notch. The Biddy Babs, who are voiced by the super underrated voice actress Sarah Jane McPhee, are creepy, and that's great. The next section has us crawling through the Ballora gallery. I even caught a bit of her singing at the beginning. This section requires solely listening and just good judgment, which are perfect ingredients for a pure horror section. Whilst it isn't exactly hard to get through, it's tense and a jump scare comes right out of the dark, and it works so goddamn well. We then move on to Funtime Freddy, which is the hardest section of the night, which is both the iconic Kellen Goff as Funtime Freddy and Becky Shrimpton as Bonbon, who do great jobs. This section, whilst having RNG on how fast Funtime Freddy moves, puts your judgment to the test, forcing you to take risks, something a later section of the game utilizes as well. I thought this night was excellent. Night 3 lets you experience a lore section with Baby before going to face Funtime Foxy, where Baby opens up more to Michael about her past, slowly seducing him. The Funtime Foxy section, whilst not that long, is scary because if you screw up or take one step too far, you get a delightful jump scare out of the shadows. Awesome. The Bonbon section takes a bit of patience but is achievable after a couple of tries. And I'll admit, it's probably the weakest section of the game, as you just need to do a bit of clicking, and that's basically it, to be honest. Night 4. Controversial opinion. Even though this night is hard at first, once you learn to balance your time on each spring lock, guys, it ain't that hard as people say. I beat it on Steam and the ClickTeam version fairly easily, having figured that out. I also did it without a stopwatch, as having a mental layout of time works much better for me. I personally love the puzzle, as we learn a bit more about the Springlock suits tonight, and a bit more hints as to where Sister Location takes place in the timeline. I personally think the complaints with Night 4 are a bit too much, guys. It's not that hard. It's a 3-minute section. I mean, come on. Night 5. Route 1 has you typing stuff into Baby's keypad and getting yourself scooped. Now on to real Night 5. In order to get access to the private room, you needed to play the 8-bit minigame, get the ice cream at the end, and run all the way back to the start. This minigame took me multiple attempts as everything has to be done in a specific amount of time. I managed to do it with just 2 seconds left. I honestly think this minigame is harder than Night 4, but that might just be me talking here. End of Night itself is the best gameplay section out of any FNAF game ever made. It is the perfect way to wrap up the entire game in a climactic boss fight, which future titles like Security Breach failed to do so, in my opinion at least. This night requires a lot of careful listening, whilst also making the cams more useful, as Ennard can silently move, or instead of walking straight up to your door in a hallway, he can walk away or go into the closet. Even though I got angry during 5 AM because Ennard was lightning fast, this section is pure perfection. What pegs Night 5 down a bit for me though is if you die in End of Night, you have to redo the baby section, and every time you redo it, she'll say a different set of numbers. In hindsight, it wasn't too much of an issue, but it was an unnecessary gameplay choice by Scott, as the Ennard section was already a full-on FNAF night. It's not as if the Ennard section makes the runtime of the game too short. Anyways, I beat End of Night with 3% left and was very ecstatic to see the result. Now that we have discussed the gameplay of Sister Location, let's talk about an aspect this game does light years better than the canon previous entry in the series: its story. A lot of people think Security Breach is the worst FNAF game in every aspect, however I personally disagree. FNAF 4. It completely destroyed so much of the lore we've grown to know. The entire OG trilogy was ruined by this game, at least in my opinion. Sister Location, however, is able to tell its own narrative untied to the other games in the form of arguably the franchise's best character, Baby, whilst also trying to make some sense of FNAF 4, and to be honest, from what we know now, Sister Location was a massive help in solving 4. We learn in this game alone that the purple guy was observing the crying child in FNAF 4 in the form of these walkie-talkie threadbare plushies, as well as that the FNAF 4 house wasn't really a nightmare. Even though Sister Location didn't solve all the convoluted lore in FNAF 4, it was able to destroy the dream theory, and to me that's a win. Baby was almost a last minute entry into this franchise, and she was handled so goddamn well. A lot of characters in this franchise have confusing lore. Take William Afton. Sure, we know what he's done, but the why he did it is still yet to be explained, whereas Baby's lore is a lot more upfront. Instead of learning her lore from the books, or from some secret 8-bit minigames, we learn it from dialogue. Dialogue that is so goddamn well done by Heather Masters. To summarize the fairly simple story of Sister Location, we Michael Afton go down below into our father's basement to free our sister from the prison cell she's being kept in. Unfortunately, Baby tricks us and inhabits our body and escapes. If we go to the fake ending route, we understand why Baby wants to use us as a disguise. Whilst Baby's method to achieving her goal is messed up, her goal is to just live a happy normal life, doing something bad to achieve something good. The main complaint I see people have with Baby in this game is that she rarely shows up and doesn't jump scare us. I personally believe these complaints are not that justified, as the whole point of Baby is that she's supposed to deceive the player. If Baby killed us in that keypad section, it wouldn't make any sense. Also, the other complaint I see is that she wasn't in the original promotional art. She's the main character, and she should be there, right? Let's quickly go over each character that was used for each FNAF game for the promotional art. FNAF 1 Freddy. Makes sense, he's Freddy. FNAF 2 Withered Freddy? I mean, sure, he's the mascot character, but the main character is the puppet in that game. FNAF 3 Springtrap. He's the only real thing in that game. FNAF 4 Nightmare Freddy. He barely shows up in that game, and it should have been Fredbear. FNAF 6 Location. Funtime Freddy. Sure, it should have been Baby, but Funtime Freddy has the most screen time, besides perhaps Enid. And FNAF 6 is Rockstar Foxy. Yeah, no. It's a pretty pointless complaint. To end this analysis off, in so many fandoms I've seen multiple people who just follow the bandwagon. For instance, Star Wars. Sure, the sequels had some weak parts with it, and the OG trilogy is much more for me, but don't you find it insanely tiring when you see the same complaint for 4 years straight by a Star Wars fairy? An opposite situation would be the Stranger Things fandom. Personally, I love the show. I think Millie Bobby Brown is great as Elle, and everyone is on par with her doing a fantastic job. Yet for a lot of people it's cringe to like Stranger Things because it's liked by so many people, and you're not unique for doing so, which is very pathetic. These exact problems can be seen with the FNAF fandom these days after Security Breach was released, and we saw a brand new wave of people with having their hot takes to share. Every single day I see someone complaining about Security Breach and saying it's super buggy, and I'm like, great, I haven't heard that for the millionth time at this point. If you love something like Sister Location, which is highly liked by a lot of the fandom, you're cringe for doing so. Honestly, observing a lot of the negatives about this franchise, after a while can be very, very degrading. Recently, I've learned to look at some positives about Security Breach, like the Patient 71 CDs, or the section with Chica down below in the sewers, etc. And honestly, it makes me enjoy Security Breach a lot more, and I just feel a lot happier in general about the game. Constantly nitpicking stuff makes you feel pretty drained of life, to be honest, as you slowly nitpick detail after detail and lose more and more sanity doing so. This unnecessary love to hate stuff I've seen a lot in the MCU and Star Wars, and now it's slowly becoming something in this fandom. It's completely fine to criticize something, but to constantly do so for months, even years, is just a very sad experience. Do I think Sister Location is a perfect game? No. Playing games like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild gives me a high expectancy of a lot of games I play. But do I think you should like what you want to like regardless of what the majority thinks? Absolutely. Too often do I see people make their minds about stuff solely because one YouTuber said so, without finding out themselves. Because on the other end of the blade, there are indeed people who say Sister Location is their favourite FNAF game without even playing it. I suppose, though, that's just the way a lot of people are, and there's not much you can really do about it. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, please refrain from sending anyone or anything hate in this video. It's completely unnecessary and makes things bad for everyone. It's also just very, very unbased. Alright, bye.